Okay, so I've got Mike McVicar here and Katie Levy, who are longtime friends and founders and partners, both business-wise and romantically, at Gander, which is a creative studio in Brooklyn. They've done work for Misfit Juices, Bonza Pasta, Code Academy, and a bunch of other cool clients. Mike designed the identity for one of my past endeavors, Dispatch, which is a little known fact, maybe. And before that, Mike was at Red Antler for a while and worked on one of my favorite app brands, which is Swarm. And Katie was an in-house designer at Kiehl's for a long time. So you guys obviously are like a power couple in the brand and identity world here. And so, I'm looking for help on this new project, which I've just started, and I'm just trying to like figure out, this is not my area of expertise. And so, the first question I have is like, if I was a client of yours, and I'm not paying you any money, so thank you for taking this 45 minutes. Like where would we start? Like, how do you guys approach this initially? Like if someone comes to you with like very little to start with?
Well, we always say that we start with strategy and positioning, which is on our website. I think we say we climb high enough to see the past and the future, and we figure out who cares and who should care, and then we come down from our high position and we get to work. And that really defines like what we do with like brands. Strategy work is like sometimes this part of design where everyone's like, oh yeah, it's like this fluffy part at the beginning, but we really use strategy to find out who you are, who this brand is, and what we try to do is we get a basis for understanding so that we can come back to this point and make decisions rooted in what the goals for the project, your target audience, and who you are, like why this thing exists. And so we try to do some digging and climbing, and there's a lot of analogies. and we create we usually do like a positioning document where we say, these are all the things you said, and this is all the things we said, and is this right? And this is the research we found, and this is all that stuff. Is this right? So like for this, like we would talk to photographers, we would research photography apps, we research other apps, other communities of people who have successful interactions in a way that's, avoids some of the negativity of social media. We would do kind of like a whole thing to find out.
Yeah, and trying to like basically uncover the story that we're trying to tell. Like, what is your story, and how are we going to tell it in a way that's different than what other people are doing? And that'll inform the rest of the process, the visuals. But yeah, like Mike said, we kind of start with that little nugget of story, the thing that makes you different, and go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I actually spent some time over the last few days kind of trying to uncover that. I mean, I looked at a bunch of what I would roughly call competitors, but that's kind of a wide range of things, but like the question I ask myself is, where are people doing this today? Like, if this is a need that exists, and I think it is, then like logically people should be fulfilling this in some way. And like if Instagram is not doing it, again, part of my hypothesis, and so, I found a lot of other places, things even just like subreddits, right? Or Facebook groups, things like that. And then there are some, like kind of more niche things where you can submit photography for like formal critique by like an expert, whatever that means. And, and there's sort of, it's a little bit uppity and whatever, but so there's like a wide range of stuff. And then there's like 500 PX or 500 pixels. I don't know how they usually pronounce it, but that is probably the biggest social network specifically for photographers. But like I just had such a bad like experience on there too, and just doing some of this research, like you guys are suggesting here, I've seen that sentiment being played out a lot. Where it's like people are like posting in forums like, hey, like I just can't deal with this service anymore. Like the people are posting all kinds of like poorly photoshopped, like obviously photoshopped images that are like stuff, and like some of the like HDR stuff get like way out of control. I don't know if you guys have ever poked around on there, but you know, it just sort of loses any kind of like sort of realness or authenticity at some point.
Well, that's interesting because like you're defining a viewpoint, which will probably be one of the strongest things that you'll need to bring to the brand, which is like, what is authenticity to you? You're gonna have to define a probably not fully agreed upon basis of like what you're looking to create. Like, you know, like by limiting, you're gonna probably open up a nice can of like restraints. Can of like, or not open.
A can of restraints.
Can of restraints, like.
Yeah.
I love to mash up.
Yeah. I'm gonna write that one down. Open up a can.
We really opened it up a can of restraints. It's like a can of worms, but the opposite. But I think that's interesting because like you're defining that a little bit, and that could be like an interesting place to like understand like. You're talking about photography purism in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's tough to define, and I guess that's, you know, part of the challenge that I have, and part of why I'm talking to you guys. But you know, thinking about, it's not really what I would call traditional like purism in the sense that I don't know, like there's no like real like ideology around it. It's more that like the stuff that I'm talking about specifically that I'm reacting to on 500 pixels is like it's like super, you know, people like taking these super surreal scenes that like have no like artistry really whatsoever. It's just like people, I don't know. It's hard to describe, and I can't put my finger on it, but it's like it's not the kind of photography I would be interested in even like engaging with or giving feedback on personally, and so it's just like something that, even though that's not the core of kind of what I'm necessarily going after with this project, it's something that I've thought about, and that kind of like, how do I signal that like this is actually not for those people? And that's something that's kind of interesting too, and something I wanted to hit on, so good segue. I really love the work that you guys did with EXO, right? Is that that's the bug stuff?
Yeah, cricket
bug stuff.
Yeah, and so like I thought that it was great and just like so funny and clever, but like, you know, that's obviously kind of a niche thing, and I mean, I'm sure that when they talk, like they want it to be something that becomes much more like widespread and mainstream, but you know, eating crickets like in protein bars or whatever is a fairly niche thing. And so like, did you think at all about like when you're signaling it in the identity and the way that you know, were crafting it, like you kind of almost like saying it's for these types of people and it's not for those types of people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we heard correctly. The question is kind of like, is that you want us to talk through a little bit about the idea of like positioning it for a very niche audience?
Like,
well, thinking about like, you know, we obviously talk about like, well, who is it for, but then like, who is it not for as well?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how important, like, it's definitely good to define it, whether that's like an outward facing positioning. Like for example, like EXO kind of used this attitude of this is who this brand is for, and this is who this, and this is why we're like against. They use that, their positioning as like point of attitude, or like being taking pride in being weird or different, as a like crickets being different and kind of getting ahead of this curve of like, yeah, the crickets are just normal to eat.
Yeah. Well, I think it was necessary for their brand, just because they were coming from a place of feeling pretty generic, like a granola bar, and like they wanted to feel pride about this really interesting ingredient instead of feeling like covering it up. Like, let's make that the focal point of our brand and accept that's going to isolate people and basically be like, you know, we're not for everyone, and embrace that. That's not necessarily like the right approach for every brand. It was right for them because they wanted to like really lean into their audience. And then there are other brands that we work with that don't necessarily want to take that stance and they want to. So specifically, it kind of sounds like
sorry, you dropped out for a
you
second.
want it to be taken pretty seriously. Okay.
Oh, shoot.
I'm sure, like right when you were saying like the good stuff, I could tell it was like so good what you were saying.
Oh, it was probably the
Just rewind like 20 seconds if you can.
Oh man, I don't even remember what we were talking about.
And you just went into like a fugue state where you were just like spewing knowledge.
Yeah, just imagine. Well, I think you were saying that like depends on how. Well, I guess to build off what you're saying, it depends on how you're positioning it. Like, are you, like it's like how where the brand lives is also like a really important place to understand like what kind of attitude or outward facing like copywriting, for example, that the brand would have, like a tone of voice. And sometimes you think about it in terms of like, what's the Subway ad going to look like? But what's interesting about this product and app you're creating is it probably won't have a Subway ad. And so by
well, my marketing budget is $0 right now. So
but right, like it's probably its sheer existence and maybe even like exclusivity will be a moniker of this is not for everyone. And so you have like the way you position it and like give it the attitude of like simplicity and like even like elegance could be a marker of that.
I think like this product is similar to EXO only in that it like I really don't think it is for everyone. I think that's kind of what you're saying. Part of the annoying part about some of these other apps is that they are kind of like arms wide open, like come one, come all. You can have a place to put your artwork, and then that there's a lot of shitty artwork that then you're like, do I even spend time like talking about this? Like, why can't I be with my peers who are, we're kind of at the same level, So maybe it's either about like creating an app where it's like peer to peer and it goes with like the number of years of experience, or it's just like simply, you have to submit a portfolio to get in, and then it's like a very exclusive group so that it's like a learning experience for people and that they're all on the same level.
Yeah.
It definitely feels like something a little bit more exclusive, which you could speak about through, copywriting or visual identity.
Yeah, the topic of exclusivity is really interesting because like at some level it's a little bit, repulsive to people, or like even, someone that wants to create something that has wide appeal. But I think there's one thing, a big lesson that I've learned over the last few years, just doing different things and kind of thinking about marketing more and reading more about it. And Seth Godin, like I just read his latest book, This Is Marketing, which is actually really fantastic, I thought. And he talks a lot about the power of the niche audience and really like being able to take something and make it the best in the world for a small set of people. And by small, like, that could be 1 million people, but like there's, however many billion people in the world. So like when you say like, no, this is really just for these people, like his wife runs a gluten-free bakery. And it's like, that's kind of a weird thing, maybe more common nowadays, like, but for like some segment of people, like that gluten-free bakery that makes really tasty gluten-free stuff is like the best for them, especially if they live in the Upper West Side, which I think is where it is. So, that kind of thing, and like those kind of signaling to the right people sometimes is a little bit easier. Like in the case of the bakery, like, yeah, well, gluten-free, like everyone knows what that is, but like some things are a little bit more difficult. And so, yeah, it's something that I've thought about, like, submitting portfolios, things like that. That could be interesting, but then it also becomes like, who's the gatekeeper? Like, is it just always me and it's just my thing and I'm the king and, like I do what I want? Or like, how do you bring other people, on board and empower them? And I think that, my time at Meetup, this is a really interesting question too, because like in meetup groups, you have either same kind of dynamics at play. A lot of meetup groups are closed, where you actually have to submit a little bit of information about yourself or something in order to join the group, and then whoever's the organizer or someone that the organizer has deputized then like makes those decisions, and so it's almost becomes like a culture, like setting a culture. I'm sure that's something you guys even think about, like with your studio, and as you grow, like who kind of owns that. And I mean, you make hiring decisions, right? Like that's an exclusive process, and so it's definitely interesting, but it feels unusual in the era, especially for like an app, or like in the era of the Instagrams and things like that, where literally anyone in the world can go for free and just press a few buttons and like have an account that's the same as like Kim Kardashian's account minus a few million followers or whatever. So it's an interesting thing. Okay, so I want to transition a little bit, but so we've talked about a few concepts here specifically to the project, and I mean, what is, if you like, the stepping stones from we talked about really doing research, looking at what people are using now. I feel like I'm kind of there. Like I've done that work a little bit, and I kind of have some sense for maybe the space that like this new app would kind of play in. Like this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about here, although I'm not perfectly settled. But how do you start to go from that sort of conceptual work into translating that into the visual identity?
So it sounds like you're saying what does it take to kind of go from concept and maybe even strategy to transition into like visuals?
Yeah, so just vaguely, if you could give me a sense, so you guys see, obviously I'm early, but I feel like I kind of have a sense of the market. I kind of feel like I know vaguely where this product might fit, but okay, so, and obviously I'm kind of trying to fast forward things as just a guy doing this on the side, then, if I was gonna really, do this as a big proper thing. And so like, what is the shortcuts I can take to go from like where I am now to something that is, more visual and starting to translate that concept into a visual identity?
I think like a good first step is mood boards. I mean, that's what we like to do after we've done strategy and personality words and things like that. It just kind of gives a quick, big, high-level picture of where you want your brand to go from, like overall personality. Like it could be, photography. It could be some typography samples or some color palette samples.
UI stuff.
Yeah, like things that kind of give a snapshot into like when you squint your eyes, what does this brand kind of look like? And I think that just at least helps point you in the right direction for where you're going to go next, so that you're not kind of starting from the ground up as you're trying to, work on all these other elements of the brand. You're starting from a single unified vision.
Yeah.
What we do with our clients, we do a few different directions to just get a pulse of where they see the brand going.
A few directions of mood board.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, it's kind of interesting because like that I think can be defined a lot through the strategy work, like really defining like what the personality words, like we define like what the 4 pillars of the brand are. And this helps establish like what tonality the brand will take.
So are those pillars just words or phrases, or like how do you define those generally?
Sorry, what you said, are they what?
Like words or phrases or?
Yeah, so they're like 4 words. So like, say off the top of our head, it was like human,
playful,
bold, playful, and utilitarian. And so we know that it's not going to be like crafted or like
historic
or something like that. Like, and those 4 words will help us get to like a tonality area that's like, well, we're not going to create a mood board that looks like an old Polaroid or something like that. So maybe it needs to be like technical, utilitarian, human, and whatever. So like what we do is we can say like, I think what would really come down to is like, just to like go a little bit back to what you were saying, like defining like, is this brand about quality and exhibiting the quality of the photograph and like just the best in the world, or is it about feedback?
Or like in community and like openness and collaboration or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really pivotal thing, is like, is this about like no frills, like just like you're in an art gallery, you want to see mostly the image and like the most minimal typography, and it feels technical. It feels like maybe it's taken a page out of like old typographic books of photo, you know, when you see like the numbers for your f-stop on your camera, is it like taking it
Right.
like, and it feels like in that world? Or is it a little bit more user friendly and about like giving easy feedback? And like, I think that's really interesting thing, because like I think those are two different definitions. Like it could be really exclusive and about being the best photographers in the world, or it's about like creating a network of people you trust to give you feedback. It's like, will you look at my photos on?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's about being the best photographer in the world, because those people won't be on this app. They don't need help.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah.
what I'm talking about is like you creating a brand that's like the exclusive. It's exclusive, and you have to be really good at photography to get it. Or you're like, find me on Clippy, which is I'm assuming the name.
Right, that's actually at the top of the list. So
Right. Clippy or Granny. And we're gonna, and to give me, like, I would love to give you some, can you give me some feedback or this shot I just took? And like someone would like, it's about networking with people you respect and love. And so to me that like is a very different personality, which we would base on like the brand. And then for the personality and mood boards, you can start to build on that. It's like, you know, and there's a lot of overlap. Like it's not, you know, if it's all about feedback and not about quality as much, then is it, you know, it could still look elegant and feel nice, nicely refined and
Right.
Yeah, but starting with the personality words and like, what is the emotion that you want people to feel when they're experiencing this product? And then you can kind of start to tease out like, well, if that's the emotion or that's the feeling, what does that mean? That like, what is our color palette? Is it like seductive and cool, or is it like warm and playful? Like you can really start to pull out different like elements of typography and photography style and that kind of thing, just from basic words, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great. And like, I love the way you said that. Like, you know, I think that's so important. Like, what do you want? How do you want people to feel? And you know, that's something that it just really gets at the heart of all of it. I think, like, right, like at the end of the day, it's really like the colors. I mean, every aspect of the brand, the tonality of the photography, the type. It's all leading up to some kind of feeling that you're trying to like impress upon people, right? Because I think like feelings stick with you. That's other like thoughts, you know, you can sort of intellectualize it, but it's just like really just how it makes you feel. So that's super helpful. So just another general question, like I'm interested, you know, what does success look like for you guys? Like when you work with a client, I mean, you know, I know you like to get paid, so that's a good measure of success. But like, you know, how do you think about that? And of course, like I know, like, you know, client being happy, right? Like that's a real measure of success. But is there anything else when you think about like, you know, was this successful or not? Even retrospectively, like once it goes out into the world, you know, do you, when you reflect on things that you've done or whatever, you know, how do you think about that?
I have an answer.
Yeah.
But I'll let you go first.
I mean, I always love it when I see, yes, like all those things, like our clients really happy. I love to see a client that can like actually use our brand successfully, that can take what we've built and like actually implement it in a way that's like on brand, and that it feels like, okay, we did a good job. Like not only did we create this beautiful thing, but we actually equipped them with the tools that they needed to go on and be a business. Not everyone does that, but when that happens, it's really cool.
Yeah. Like I think one of the things that I'll start with the two things that may be less expected. So there's two things that I definitely feel like I consider success. Like when clients say that they feel that we really understand who they are, is where I feel like we've really succeeded in a lot of things. And when they come back to us over and over again, and they feel like, yes, you know who we are, you get who we are, and we're getting such great feedback from the brand. But when we come out of the strategy, positioning, or even branding process, and people they feel like, yes, this is what I was trying to create. That's one of the most successful. And then on the business side, if we help them achieve some sort of goal in their financial or business wise, it's really satisfying when you help them rebrand and then they get picked up by all the Whole Foods in the United States.
Right.
It's like, holy shit, that was really directly impactful to your business. And then what all designers want to hear and say is when we get picked up on design blogs and we get on brandnew.com, when we get other people's scratching our backs. But I don't think it's nearly as...
Are they scratching our backs, or are they patting us on the back?
Well, they're scratching at your back, clawing.
Give me that success.
I really like to mix metaphors.
Yeah, you do.
It's I always say, never throw a glass house at your chickens before they hatch in the bush. And
yeah, my mom used to say that all the time.
Very common phrase. Of course, peer feedback is...
Peer feedback, but when the client says that we get them, that's where it's at.
Yeah, and I think that's, something that, I'm not primarily a brand or identity designer, but, that stuff tends to be very visible, probably more so than almost anything else. And, it's always interesting to see the reactions to different things. I'm sure you guys... very topical, the Slack rebrand. There's been a lot of talk on that. So before we go, I have to get your thoughts on the Slack rebrand, because otherwise I would be doing a disservice.
Slack definitely needed to be rebranded.
So wait, do you guys use Slack?
Yeah, we do. It definitely needed a rebrand. I feel like they went a little hard. I'm actually just judging the logo and the lockup. On their actual website, I think that they have some interesting illustration stuff going on. But
Mike
overall,
is shaking his head though.
I did a B-. I don't know. It just it needed to happen, but I wouldn't have got unnecessarily complicated.
It needed to happen, but not like this.
Yeah.
It
looks like a non-profit or government agency.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I did agree with. I saw someone say that on Twitter, and I think that, it looks kind of generic, hospital-y sort of,
I don't think it represents the simplicity and power of the application as much as it could. I think it's fine. It gets the job done. I think for as interesting and can robust as a application that it is, they could have really hedged towards bold simplicity than overly detailed resort icon.
Yeah.
And
the sweaty swastika, that was my favorite.
Oh my gosh, that's so intense.
Wow, that's really...
Yeah.
That settles it for me.
There are also, oh my gosh.
I'm going from a B-. I'm going to demote it down to a C+.
And there are some, oh my gosh, I bet you $1 million somebody has drawn 4 penises on that logo already.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. We can edit that out if that's inappropriate. But I saw that.
Sorry, you had more thoughts. Yes, please continue. This Slack stuff is important.
It's fine. We're good. We're good.
We got it all out. I'm glad you
I don't
asked.
like to harsh on people's vibes. They probably spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, that's another thing too that I think is an important point. I never really like to publicly, bash on anything too hard, because I think when you do work in the creative industry and you see how much work goes into things, you realize that, people are all just kind of out there doing their best, and you know, sometimes things work and sometimes they don't, and everybody's got an opinion, and sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. So
Yeah, totally.
so on that note, thank you guys so much for taking time. I know you are very busy, and you just moved in. Well, have you moved in yet?
We moved in 2 days.
Yeah, haven't
2
packed
days.
yet.
Nice. Congrats on the new place.
Thanks.
I'll be waiting for my housewarming invitation for me to come over.
Yes.
But I'm excited for you guys. So yeah.
Actually, if anyone wants to come over to our new place, whoever watches this,
Yeah,
4705 Coney Island Avenue.
That's not our address.
And
Don't
it's
go there.
next Saturday at 10 p.m.
Yeah, perfect. Now some poor person in Coney Island.
Yeah, I know.
But they don't know the dates.
All right, great. Good night, guys. Thank you.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.